Hi. So this video is going to be on dividing by fractions pretty much. And before I get into doing the actual examples, I just want to talk a little bit about how we go about dividing by fractions. So we already covered multiplying fractions, which was relatively straightforward, where we just used the product of the numerator and the product of the denominator. And we're going to kind of use that to solve our dividing by fractions pretty much. So this initial one here, this isn't two fractions divided by each other, but I'm going to use this to kind of prove a point. So 5 divided by a third. So when you divide two numbers, what you're asking is, how many of this number on the right can I fit into this number on the left? That's what you're asking. So I'm asking how many thirds can I fit into a fifth? So what I want you to consider is how many thirds can you fit into 1? And if you got this correct, it would be 3. You can fit 3 thirds into 1. So if you can fit 3 thirds into 1, how many can you fit into 5? How many thirds could you fit into 5? And the answer there would be 15, because each one would be able to hold 3 thirds, and you got 5 of them. So it's 5 times 3. So what effectively this comes down to is that 5 divided by a third is the same as 5 times by 3. So these 5s have stayed the same, but the sign has changed, and a third has become 3. Now that's interesting. So let's try something else. Let's try 4 divided by a seventh, for example. So how many sevenths can I fit in 1? That's right, I can fit 7. And then, so how many could I fit in 4? Each one can carry 7 sevenths. And then there's 4 of them. So each one carrying 7 sevenths. So 4 times 7. That's the same as. And from this, we can kind of see where we're going with this. So these 4s have stayed where they are. They've stayed there. But this has been changed to times. And now this has been changed to 7. So the rule we can deduce from this is that if you divide by a fraction, or if you divide by any number, it is the same as timesing by its reciprocal. So here we have a third and we have 3. So we change the sign, and we change the number to its reciprocal. And the same principle applies for when you do fractions, pretty much. So in the previous video, in the reciprocals video, we talked about finding the reciprocal of a fraction, and we're going to use that principle here for this. So for this one here, 2/9 divided by 3/5, I know this is the same as 2/9 times by 5/3. So what I've done here is I've changed the sign to a fifth because I know it's the same as timesing by the reciprocal. So I'm changing this to times, and then the reciprocal of 5/3 of 3/5 is 5/3. And then I solve this appropriately. So 2 times 5 is 10, 9 times 3 is 27, and then that doesn't simplify anymore, and we leave that there. Okay, next one. So again, I know this is the same as timesing by the reciprocal of 4/3, which is 3/4. So this is going to be the same as 6/7 times by 3/4, which is going to be 18 on top and 28 on the bottom, which I can then reduce to, by dividing by 2 on top and bottom, I can reduce this to 9/14. 9/14. And the same principle applies to the rest of these pretty much. So 8/3 divided by a fifth is the same as 8/8 times by 5/1. And you could say the reciprocal of a fifth is 5. You could, but in this example, it is better to have this 1 just to not confuse the issue. So 8 times 5 is 40. 3 times 1 is 3, and it's 40/3. Next one, 1/6 divided by 2/9. That's the same as a sixth times 9/2. So timesing by the reciprocal of 9/2. So that is 9/12, which I know to be 3/4. So 9 and 12 are both in the 3 times table, so we divide by 3 on top and bottom, and we'll get 3 and 4. Next one, 6/11 divided by 4/3. So this is the same as 6/11 times by 3/4. So then this is going to be 18 over 44. Sorry, my bad. 18 over 44, and then I realized that these are both divisible by 2, so this would be 9 over 22, or it would simplify to 9 over 22. So it's not incorrect to say leave it as 18 over 44, but 9 over 22 is definitely better. It's definitely a better answer. So 16 over 3 divided by 8/3, so this is the same as 16 over 3 times by 8 over 3. So I am going to test myself here by having to do 16 times 8, unfortunately. So that is 128. And then that is divided by and over 3 times 3, which is 9. And I don't believe that goes any further. So moving on. So 2/7 divided by an 1/8. So that's the same as 2/7 times by 8 over 1, which is equal to 16 over 7. Which is equal to 16 over 7. And then the very last one, hopefully this is a plethora of examples on how to do this, because this will be what the homework is on. So this is going to be 5/8 times by 5 over 2, which is equal to 25 over 16. And this doesn't simplify any further. These two are coprime, these two are coprime. I believe these two are coprime, and so on. So this doesn't simplify any further. And that's your answer pretty much. So that's how you divide fractions.